Hi, my name is Trisha Price, and I'm the Chief Product Officer at Pendo. And today I'm going to talk to all of you about leveraging your technical experience on the path to the C-suite. So first, before we jump into leveraging your technical background, I want to talk a little bit about my journey and how I got here to Chief Product Officer. I started off in undergraduate in mathematics, and I realized during that time that I had a knack for solving problems, for sort of the technical mindset. And from there, I went on to graduate school, where I focused a bit more on computer science and software engineering. I was a software engineer in that time period and remained in a technical capacity for at least 8 years, had a couple of different roles, and landed at a product company called Eagle Investment Systems in Boston. And that's important on my journey, and you'll find out why in just a second. From there, I ended up in nCino, which is the first time I had an executive role in the C-suite, where I was also the chief product officer. I was also in charge of engineering and product in that role, so remained leaning on my technical background through that job. And all of this led me here to my chief product officer role at Pendo. So let's come back to Eagle Investment Systems and why that was important. So I told you that I started off as a software engineer and I was writing code. At Eagle, I was writing code, and we got on a whiteboard one day trying to solve a problem. And as we were going through the whiteboard, it was a couple of subject matter experts and me, and we were trying to figure out a pretty hard problem in accounting for fixed income securities. Yes, that sounds pretty nerdy, I'm sure, to all of you, but it was a lot of fun, and it was a hard math problem to solve and right up my alley. We came to the end of the problem, and we felt like we had a really good solution. And so now it was my role to come back to my desk and start writing the code to implement this elegant solution we had come back with. And I kind of had this moment of clarity, which was what I loved was being on that whiteboard. What I loved was solving a problem with other people. The actual practice of writing the code wasn't exactly my love. Yeah, I appreciated that part of the role, and it was important in getting software in the hands of users. But really the fun for me was that aha moment on the whiteboard. So what I realized during that time was, how do I use this technical foundation, my technical expertise, for a different path, for a path to leadership, for a path to the C-suite, for a path to solving big company problems instead of just writing the code in that moment. And so this was sort of the beginning of my journey. You can see here that I'm not the only one who believes that technical expertise and a technical background is the path to solving big business problems. 34 out of 100 top performing CEOs have engineering degrees. And you can see these are people you all know pretty well. Larry Page from Google, Jeff Bezos from Amazon, Tim Cook from Apple. Indra, you can see these are big names who have been incredibly successful, and they all also have leaned on their technical expertise and background to be successful and be where they are today. So today I'm going to talk about 3 key strategies in order to implement and use your technical expertise and get to the C-suite. The first is leaning into your technical background. The second, put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And then third is surround yourself with different types of people and why diversity matters. So let's start on the first, leaning into your technical background. So for me, as a C-suite member, everything is a trade-off. Everything is a prioritization decision. Everything is, we can do this if we have to make choices. And so being able as a chief product officer to lean on my technical understanding of why a problem, an engineering problem, is hard really helps me with that prioritization. If I go back to my early days of when I learned to write software, professors, and even my first business problems out of school, they would give me this problem to solve. And you kind of feel overwhelmed, right? And you have to break that problem down into parts. And you decide, what do you do first? What do you do second? Sometimes things fail. Sometimes things succeed. Sometimes you start back over at step 1. And it's very iterative in nature, but you're really just narrowing this sort of big, daunting problem down day by day by day until you come up with a solution. And I find that that's such a relatable strategy when you're trying to make a big decision. Like maybe in this example on the picture, do I just, if I'm trying to pull data out of my system so that other companies can use that, or your customers can use that to combine with other data, do you just drop it into an S3 bucket or Google Cloud Storage? Or do you go all the way and have direct connects to things like Snowflake, right? This is just a simple example of a decision you have to make as a chief product officer, but it's impactful to your customers. Well, how do you make it, right? You go back to those engineering principles of breaking the problem down. What can you deliver first in a meaningful amount of time that also delivers enough value for your customers so that you can get the company outcomes that you're trying to get? So every day, as I think about a C-suite member, how to make trade-off and prioritization decisions, I lean on some of those core principles that were also impactful for me when I was first out of school as a software engineer. The second key strategy we're going to talk about is putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. This one might feel a little more out of the box than the first. But again, I'm going to come back to when you were first out of school or first learning to become a software engineer, and actually all the way through your career as a software engineer, you get thrown really complicated problems, right? And you have to break those down. And when you first get that problem, it sort of feels unsurmountable. It feels uncomfortable, right? There's no exact equation in a technical background that tells you this is exactly what you do. You have to try things, and it's uncomfortable because there's no clear path in the beginning. Well, that is very, very similar to my journey in getting to the C-suite, is I had to put myself in several uncomfortable positions. The first of those uncomfortable positions is I was in product at a company called Primatics Financial, and I was asked to go to Salt Lake City, Utah, and to help open up our office there and run customer success and sales and account management for that territory. As you can imagine, this was incredibly uncomfortable for many reasons. One, it was uncomfortable because I had never been in sales before. I was a product person and an engineer. Second, it was in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I was living in DC with a family, husband and 2 kids. And so, so many times people, maybe say that's not for me. I'm not willing to pick up and move across the country, and that's perfectly okay. But for me, putting myself in that incredibly uncomfortable situation taught me so much. And I don't believe I would be where I am today as an executive if I hadn't taken that chance of moving my family and putting myself in an uncomfortable situation, but even more so from a career perspective to try out sales and customer success. And I feel like it's made me a much better C-suite member as well as chief product officer to have empathy for my peers and colleagues who run those other groups. After that experience, that company was sold and I had to figure out my next move. And I ended up coming to nCino, as I told you earlier. Well, guess what? From Salt Lake City, we moved to Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. So from the mountains to the sea, another big change. At this point, my son had been in 5 different elementary schools, going from DC to 2 different ones in Salt Lake to 2 different ones in Wrightsville Beach. But it was an incredible experience. And they too have learned how to meet new people and be successful in different environments. And then nCino, when I came, I joined that company when we were quite small and we stayed there all the way through a year past IPO. And so I put myself in lots of uncomfortable situations in learning new things during that time. If you look at the picture at the top where I'm speaking at Finovate, that was the first time I ever did a public speaking engagement for over 1,000 people. And for all of us, we know when we're not used to that, it's so nerve-wracking. But what if I had never tried that? What if I had never put myself in that uncomfortable situation? I wouldn't have the opportunity to be here today. And same thing at Salesforce. At the bottom picture, had an opportunity to speak at Dreamforce. And so these experiences were uncomfortable. And I learned to use that same feeling that I had when I got my first project as a software developer, that feeling of there's this insurmountable thing and I've got to get good at it. And I'm okay being uncomfortable. I'm okay with the unknown because that helps me learn new muscle and grow. And that's why I often say your career is much more of a jungle gym than it is as a ladder. For me, it's been from being a software engineer to a tech lead to an engineering manager to, like I said, head of customer success and sales in a whole different region of the country, to actually running global sales at that company and then coming back to product, which is what I love. And I imagine all of you do too. But, I think too many times we always think about how do I get promoted into manager or the job above me or to my boss's role. And I find that the more well-rounded you are in your career, the better you are as a leader and the better you are as a teammate to the other departments, especially in product. Because in product, we are that glue between engineering and sales and marketing. And it is our job to really understand each of those roles and bring them together. And so that jungle gym nature of really building new muscles and trying new things and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, I think has been incredibly impactful for me on my journey. And I hope something that each of you can take away from today's presentation is something to be willing to try. And I imagine many of you have in getting to this role of product today. The third key strategy I want to talk about is something that is incredibly important to me and incredibly important to this women in product community that we're a part of and why we're all here, which is surround yourself with different types of people. Now, when I talk about diversity, in this context, I certainly mean minorities and women, but I also mean just people who are different than you, people who think differently than you, people who can challenge you so that you can come up with innovation. Like innovation doesn't come from sitting in a room and nodding heads at one another and saying yes. It comes from challenging, brainstorming, and really getting to a solution that is different, that breaks the norms. And that's our jobs in product, especially. Not only is diversity, in my opinion, the right thing to do, it also gets better business results. And that's not just my opinion. You can see some numbers here. Inclusive companies are 1.7 times more innovative, and diverse teams are 87% better at making decisions. So let's do this exercise for a second. Let's pretend we're all in the same room. And if we were all in the same room, let's pretend that there's an elephant in the room, an elephant sitting right smack dab in the center of the room. And from each of you, I would ask you, based on where you're sitting, if we were all sitting in a circle, let's picture it around this elephant, to describe the elephant. Well, what would you say if you were sitting in the front of the elephant? You would talk about his trunk. You would talk about the tusks. You would talk about the ears. If you were in the back of the elephant, you wouldn't know anything about those tusks. You would only know about the tail. You might even, as you can see in this picture, talk about the bottom of the elephant's foot. Well, what if you were on the side of the elephant? You might really talk about the ears. You might see one tusk, but you wouldn't know that there were two. So if then I asked everybody to come back together and share what they saw and describe the elephant, because we're going to create a picture or a painting or an actual sculpture of the elephant, would we get it accurate? Would we get it right if we only heard the people's perspective at the front or the side or the back? It takes people on every side of this elephant to give us different perspectives to really achieving understanding what the elephant really looks like and all of the parts of the elephant. Otherwise, our elephant's going to have one tusk, or it might not have a tail. And that's an incomplete elephant. So hopefully this is a good sort of visualization exercise to make it real on this importance of diverse perspective, and not just having diverse perspectives, but hearing them, listening to them, making sure that they all have their moment so that we can come together and create the best elephant. For me, both at nCino as well as the numbers here are representative of Pendo's team, diversity has been something that's important to me and something I'm proud of. Before we get to the numbers of my team today, I want to talk about Dory Weiss, who's in this picture. And Dory was head of all of engineering at nCino when I was the chief product officer. And one of the things I appreciated about Dory is she came from a very different background than I did. Dory she was getting her PhD actually in English at the University of Texas. And she was doing the teacher's assistant PhD thing. And she kind of had a moment where she realized that's not what she wanted to do. And so she went through a learn to code program there at the university and started on a brand new career of software development. nCino met Dory as she had moved to Wilmington, where we were headquartered, and she came in as a software engineer, moved up as an engineering manager, took over all of engineering, including quality assurance, including the whole software release process, including Scrum Masters, and was there and transformed that team from a group of a few engineers to a very large enterprise company that was getting ready to go public. And during that time, one of the superpowers that Dory brought to our organization was a love of people, amazing hugs, as you can see in that picture of us together. But her teaching background, her communication from her English degree were things that she brought that I didn't have. When we started off this presentation, we talked about my background. I was math. I was computer science and software engineering. And that was my background. So when you think about diversity, it's not just the way we look or our gender. It's also how do you, as a leader, if you want this path to the C-suite, how do you leverage and create a team of people that are good at things that are different than you? How do you put people in the room and build a leadership team where you can rely on each other for your strengths and your weaknesses? And that's exactly what Dory brought. I'm an engineer, so I see a path, I get to that path of clarity, and I want to go. I want to accelerate. And Dory would say, hold on. We can go faster if we communicate, if we tell people why, if we bring them in. Another friend of mine often tells me, weigh in to buy in. Make sure your team gets a chance to weigh in, to buy into where you're going. And Dory was that person to always remind me of that. And so when I look at my teams, how do I build a team where we have a representative group that people feel aligned to, that they know that they see other people who look like them in the group, but also that have personality differences, that have degrees that are different so that they can bring different kinds of, whether it's creativity, right, in design and design thinking, or whether it's making sure you have technical engineers. It's all of those different personalities that really make a team special and a team hum. So here at Pendo, you can see some of the numbers here. 54% of my product team self-identify as female. That's a number I'm really proud of. 62% of the managers self-identify as female. I mean, amazing, right? And 26% of the product team self-identify as Asian, Black, Latinx, Hispanic, or two or more races. So to me, it's important that our team looks like the world. And it's equally as important that not just our backgrounds and our gender, but that we think differently, that we have multiple types of degrees so we can really achieve that business objective. So it's funny because when I started off, I talked about the technical expertise as a foundation to the C-suite. And while I believe that's important, I also believe it's not the only expertise that's important, that it takes a whole different group of backgrounds to really move the needle and innovate as a company. So coming back to these three key strategies, the first one is making sure that you really lean in to your technical background, that you're willing to put yourself in uncomfortable situations, right? Maybe that's a move across the country. Maybe that's taking a role that you've never taken before. As a product manager, have you ever taken a role in sales engineering? That is a great step to get yourself a little more empathy for what it's like for the quota carrying folks, right? It still relies on that extreme product knowledge. It still requires you to be great in front of customers, but it's a completely different role that's worth exploring, right? So putting yourself in uncomfortable situations also means building new muscle, going on that jungle gym of a career ladder, so that you can have both empathy for the other parts of the company and help yourself be a better leader and truly open up new opportunities, right? If you're trying to get the next big job, if you're trying to get promoted at your current role, whether that's to be a director level or a portfolio level or the CPO, the more varied experience you have, the more that's desirable because you really understand the business outcomes as a product person you're trying to drive. Because remember, success as product leaders is not about what features you shipped. No one cares what features you shipped. What it's about is, did the features you ship drive the business outcomes that your company needs? And that's what becoming a C-suite leader is all about. And so the third key strategy is surrounding yourself with different types of people. I believe in diversity. As a matter of fact, at Pendo, you can go to our website and we publish our diversity numbers. I think that's incredible. I wish every company did that. We're transparent with our numbers and we have constant goals to continually improve that. But that shows our commitment to diversity. Are you doing that? Right? Or do you have a true commitment to diversity? And is it because it's the right thing to do? And it's because that's how you get the best results in innovation. And as product people, as women in product, what is more important to us than driving innovation, than disrupting an industry, than getting those business outcomes that are so important? So I hope that this has been a helpful session for you today. I'm happy to connect with any of you. There's multiple ways here to connect with me. I hope hearing a little bit about my story has been helpful for you, from developer to customer success to sales, to product, to running product and engineering, to now with a sole focus in product. It's just one journey. There's so many different journeys out there and ways to get there. But I do believe that technical foundation, that technical expertise is what has fueled me to be able to implement the 3 strategies that we talked about through this presentation. And I think it's that willingness to play on the jungle gym and try new things, combined with the comfort and confidence to do that because of that technical expertise, because of those experiences that I learned early on, that's allowed me to do that and take advantage of those uncomfortable situations. And then I think it all comes together when you're able to put that diverse team together in a room and really drive results and innovation above and beyond what any of us can do alone, right? Being a product manager, not just a product leader, not just a C-suite member, but being a product manager is all about being able to understand different perspectives, combine that with technical solutions, and being able to ruthlessly prioritize to get those business outcomes that our companies need us to deliver, right? Whether that's opening a new market, ARR growth, increasing win rate. These are all the outcomes that we as product leaders need to deliver for our company. And so implementing those 3 key strategies, I hope are helpful for you as women in product to achieve those outcomes. So thank you so much for coming to this session. And I hope you have a wonderful conference and I hope to hear from some of you. Thank you.